privilege to welcome Vice President Kamala Harris to WRTP Big Step today. I'd like to start out just by thanking WRTP and Lindsay Bloomer for hosting and recognize a couple people in labor that are with us in attendance. So Pam Fent is with us. She is the president of the Milwaukee Area Labor Council. Steve Brightlow, business manager of Plumbers Local 75. Tony Nira, business manager of Laborers 113. And Ryan Neubauer of IBEW 494. I mention these folks because they're instrumental in the lead line replacement that's going on here in Milwaukee. And that is a direct result of the Biden administration. We cannot be more thankful for the work in the short time Vice President Harris and the Biden administration has done. You are changing Milwaukee and you are changing lives. In this building alone, we produced apprenticeship training. That is the path to the middle class. And through union apprenticeship, we can rebuild the middle class. So, again, my sincere thank you for coming out today, and thank you for all the work you've done. I'd now like to introduce Congresswoman Gwen Moore.
Thank you so much, Mayor Dan, and thank you for your tremendous leadership as the president of the Building Trades here in Milwaukee County. I'm so delighted and pleased to be here with the EPA administrator who accompanied our Vice President Kamala Harris and the second gentleman who is a tremendous friend to all of us. And I just want to join in thanking all of the people in the House of Labor who are going to be a part of this initiative. And in particular, I do want to shout out Lindsay Bloomer as the woman, in case you didn't think, you were confused about Lindsay, the woman of Big Step here, the first woman in history who's led up this kind of initiative. And that reassures me that there's going to be diversity in the opportunities. Madam Vice President, we are so happy that you're making this your first stop on your tour regarding replacing lead pipes, and we want to write you in. We want to make sure you come back when we replace the last lead lateral. Thanks to the investments that the Biden administration has made in the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, we got a lot of work to do here. You're going to hear from a parent, Deanna Branch, and she has 2 children. She's going to tell us a tremendous story of her journey as someone who was affected by lead pipes. She's one of the 25, her child is one of the 2,500 cases of lead poisoning that we experience in Milwaukee every year. And to have the face, and I encouraged her to really let loose with her story, because her story is a lot more dramatic than she shared with us earlier in our briefing. We heard from her, and this puts a face on the tremendous problem. There's 70,000 lead pipes in the city of Milwaukee. And according to our mayor who just left, it would take 70 years to replace them at the current level of funding that we have. We've got multiple generations of babies who have been impacted. I remember the first time I bought my first 5-gallon bottle of water that I've been buying for the last 5 years. And that's when I heard that my granddaughter was pregnant. I called her up to confirm this diagnosis, and she turned her faucet on so that I could watch the brown stuff coming out of the faucet. Everybody can't afford this, and these investments are tremendous. There's no amount of lead poisoning that is safe for our children. My basic message is that we don't want to miss an opportunity not only to fix this health problem that causes cognitive disabilities and violent behavior and all kinds of consequences, but we want to make sure that we create a lot of job opportunities for a deserving community like Milwaukee that has a lot of experience in creating the best life for its neighbors. And I thank you, and I'm going to yield back to Mayor Dan. Or do I? Oh, I have the pleasure, hold it. I have the pleasure, y'all, of introducing the best senator ever. Certainly the best one in Wisconsin, but she's the best United States senator. She has worked hard on this. I know from previous discussions with her that this problem, out of all the problems that we've had, this is one that has kept her up at night. Thank you so much, Tammy, for joining us today.
Yeah, come on, let's give Gwen a hand. So, let me see if I know how to take this off even. These N95s made in the USA, by the way, they have a good grip. Look, I am so pleased to welcome you, Vice President Harris, and you, Administrator Regan, back to Wisconsin and to Milwaukee today. And thank you to Big Step for hosting us. You know, I think it's supposed to get up to about 22 degrees today, so I'm glad you picked a warm day to come to Wisconsin. Now, I know each of you are returning to Milwaukee today, and I know that because I've seen you in your travels here in Wisconsin, and I know that you know that water defines our state. We have three coasts, as I like to say. We have the Lake Michigan as our east coast, we have Lake Superior as our north coast, and we have the mighty Mississippi as our west coast, and Illinois as our fourth coast, I guess, if you want to. But from our Great Lakes to the mighty Mississippi, it is really water that defines us. But water and access to clean and safe drinking water also defines our health, our opportunities, and our abilities to thrive. I know that both of you have talked with Wisconsinites about these water problems. And I know that you have talked about the dramatic harm to our children and the terrible costs of inaction, and about how help has come too slowly to meet the crisis. People across our country have waited far too long for progress, and people here in Milwaukee have faced especially damaging delays in getting the lead out. So I want to thank you not just for listening, but for returning to Wisconsin, returning with solutions to respond to this crisis. The bipartisan infrastructure bill has a historic investment for lead remediation and addresses other contaminants like PFAS. And it is an investment in our communities that will create family-supporting union jobs all across the state, but especially here in Milwaukee. I am so proud to stand with President Biden, Vice President Harris, and Administrator Regan to develop and enact this key legislation. We share the duty of representing the people of Milwaukee and of Wisconsin, and you have been true partners to families facing lead contamination, to workers who can replace those pipes, and to the many people who have worked tirelessly to right this wrong. Thank you again for tackling these challenges and for delivering for Wisconsin. And I want to now hand it over to Administrator Regan.
Well, thank you, Senator Baldwin, for your steadfast leadership in that introduction. And Congresswoman Moore, thank you for hosting us in your district. Mr. Mayor, thank you for hosting us in your city. You know, it's an honor. It's more than an honor to be here with Vice President Harris, who has spent her career fighting for equality, equity, justice, and the environment.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. You have done so much and will continue to do so much to protect all communities in this country, no matter the zip code or how much money people have in their pockets. Yes, I am here today as Administrator of the United States Environmental Protection Agency, but I am also here today as a father. And like any parent, my number one priority is the health and safety of my 8-year-old son. And yet there are mothers and fathers all across the country who know the pain of having a child sickened by contaminated water. The tragedy of lead is shared by too many communities, especially Black and Latino communities. A recent study has found that Black children living at or below the poverty level in the United States of America are four times more likely to have elevated levels of lead in their blood. This is an injustice that affects our big cities, it impacts our small towns, and our communities all across rural America. Back in November, during my Journey to Justice tour, I visited communities whose lives have been upended by our nation's crumbling water infrastructure. When I was in Jackson, Mississippi, I was set to meet students at an elementary school. But the morning of the visit, the school wound up closing due to low water pressure. And just hours after I visited a water treatment facility, the plant was forced to partially shut down, resulting in a boil water advisory for much of the city. And throughout the tour, I spoke with mothers and fathers whose children have been exposed to lead through the water that they are currently drinking. It is a moral imperative for all of us that no child and no family in this country is left to drink dirty water. At EPA, we follow the science, and the science on lead is settled. There is no safe level of lead exposure, not for children, not for adults, not for anyone. Lead-poisoned children are more likely to struggle academically, experience behavioral problems, and drop out of school. Early life exposures can lead and result into adverse impacts later in life, including high blood pressure, heart and kidney disease, and reduced fertility. Now, many of you have heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. It is time to get the lead out. And EPA is committed to using every tool in our toolbox to do so. Thanks to the President and the Vice President for their leadership, EPA is distributing $7.4 billion in bipartisan infrastructure law funding this year for states, tribes, and territories. And as part of this investment, Wisconsin will receive more than $140 million in the year 2022 for water infrastructure, including more than $48 million dedicated to removing lead pipes that have plagued communities for far, far too long. And there will be more of those resources to come over the next 5 years. Now, the Vice President and I are here today visiting Big Step because we also want to meet the workforce, the water workforce of tomorrow, the people who are being trained as we speak to take the lead pipes out of the ground. You see, in addition to protecting people's health, investing in water infrastructure is also about putting people back to work. The more than $140 million coming to Wisconsin this year is expected to create 2,200 jobs. Many of those jobs will be right here in Milwaukee. Investing in our water infrastructure is one of the best decisions we can make as a nation for public health and environmental protection, for the creation of jobs, and for future economic vitality for all of our communities across the country. And we're going to make sure that the communities who are most in need get the funding that they deserve. I sent a letter to every governor in every state detailing how we must target our infrastructure dollars to ensure that they get to those who need it the most. And we'll continue to work closely with our state partners on both sides of the aisle to ensure that this historic investment reaches our most vulnerable communities. Our work is not complete until every child in the United States of America has access to clean, safe drinking water. And we will not rest until the job is done and the job is done right. So now it is my pleasure to introduce Deanna Branch, a leader in her community, a Milwaukee resident whose family has seen firsthand the devastations of lead exposure.
I wasn't trying to go into detail today about why this is such an honor for me, but I'm just going to speak from my heart. 2 years ago, I was told that I was going to be on dialysis for the rest of my life, that I would never walk again. I had a voice box I had to get removed. They told my family to prepare me for a home care and to be taken care of by a caregiver for the rest of my life, but I'm here, I'm standing, I'm talking, I have my voice back, I'm breathing on my own, and I'm able to share my story, Aiden's story, with the world. I don't know how I can explain this, only God can explain this, but I defied all odds, and so did Aiden. And that's the reason I'm here today, is to share Aiden's story. And I'm honored that I'm able to walk here, to breathe, and to be able to speak and tell his story to the world. And this is just an honor for me and for him, and I'm just so happy to be here right now. Super Aiden, the lead-free superhero, now flies all over Milwaukee, teaching children how to fight the evil lead monster by eating healthy, green leafy vegetables, washing their hands and staying away from lead paint, and only drinking lead-free water. That was an excerpt from my book that Aiden and I created. It's a children's book to help spread lead awareness and to help keep kids lead-free. I did not know how serious of a problem lead exposure was until being personally impacted and facing the reality of its seriousness when Aiden was hospitalized not once but twice. And I am not alone. Too many moms are going through the same thing that I went through. And too many little boys and girls are going through what Aiden went through. This is an issue that is impacting families and communities, and disproportionately communities of color, here in Milwaukee and across the nation. We are thankful for the funding made available in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law to address this issue and get lead service lines out of our communities. For moms like me and other families involved in the Coalition on Lead Emergency, this funding is a welcome relief after years of advocacy. But we also know that it is not enough. We need more to replace the 70,000 lead pipes that are still in Milwaukee and the many, many more across the country. That is why it is so important that the Build Back Better Act pass with additional funding to replace lead service lines. I know that Vice President Harris and the rest of the administration are working hard to get that bill through. And I want to thank her for all of her hard work. With that, it is my honor to introduce the Vice President of the United States of America, Ms. Kamala Harris. Thank you. Thank you. I will.
Well, let me just first start by saying that there's almost everything about today that is about Deanna, and mothers and fathers and grandmothers and grandfathers like her around the country who have been talking, who have been shouting, who have been crying about this issue for far too long. And so I said to Deanna as we passed the podium that it is because of all of that and that sacrifice born out of fear but frustration but also a commitment that we're able to be here today, the administrator of the national EPA, the senator, the congress member, the mayor, and the vice president of the United States, supported by the president of the United States on this issue. So thank you, Deanna. Thank you. Administrator Regan, I want to thank you. We have been working on this issue since our administration started. Your role of leadership has been extraordinary, and I look forward to continuing as we travel to talk about the importance of this issue. Senator Tammy Baldwin, you and I served together for my 4 years in the Senate. I know what a leader you have been on this issue. And I can tell you, as is the case with Gwen Moore, who I've also worked with over those years, that in these two, Wisconsin has extraordinary leaders who I see when the cameras are on and when the cameras are off. And in both places, they are always fighting for the people of Wisconsin. So it is an honor and a joy to be with both of you today. And to be back in Wisconsin, back in Milwaukee with both of you, because you are usually my chaperones through the state. Mayor, thank you. What the mayor spoke to really does highlight where lead pipes becomes an intersection of so many other issues. Because this is an issue that is about public health. This is an issue that is about education. This is an issue that is about environmental justice. This is an issue that is about the beauty and importance and strength of our labor unions and their apprenticeship programs. This is an issue that is about growing a middle class, as the mayor said, because it is about developing the skills to do the work that must be done to strengthen the United States of America and our infrastructure. All of these issues intersect around this issue of lead pipes. And then combine on top of that, as has been said, the moral imperative that we have to finally take this issue seriously, not as a matter of concern, but as a matter of action. And so that is what today represents. That is what the bipartisan infrastructure law represents, which is a moment where we will finally take action on an issue that has impacted our babies, the babies of a community, our collective children, an issue that has impacted seniors who at that stage of life are particularly vulnerable to toxins, which is what we are talking about when we're talking about lead pipes. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about lead paint. Those substances that can hurt people, potentially permanently. We spoke with the doctors who are here today. We spoke with community leaders, and the bottom line is that eliminating lead exposure in our nation must be among our nation's highest priorities. Why? Well, millions of people in America are exposed to lead every day. There are up to 10 million households in America and 400,000 schools and child care facilities that have lead. In Wisconsin, as has been said, lead service lines, it is estimated, are in at least 170,000 homes, schools, and businesses. Those are places where children and people work and live. And it is a particular issue, which is why this is also an environmental justice issue, in rural communities, in poor communities, and communities of color. So let's think about what this means. Our children are going to school where they are potentially drinking lead-infused, poisonous water out of water fountains. What does this mean? It means that our children are sleeping in bedrooms that are coated with lead paint. What does this mean for the children of America? Well, 50% is estimated. 50% at least, half of children under the age of 6 in America are exposed to lead or are at risk. This is a profound issue. And as for adults, exposure to lead can result in increased blood pressure and a decreased kidney function. In our children, irreparable damage to the body and the brain. So when we think about this at the level of detail with which any parent or any community member should care, we know, again, this is an issue that we should, as a nation, commit to ending. Because as the administrator said, the only solution here is to get rid of lead in our pipes, in our paint, and the exposure that our children and our families are currently enduring. In Wisconsin in particular, there are people like Deanna, there are people like the congresswoman, the mayor, the senator, who have been talking about this forever, and it is critically important to emphasize the role and the responsibility that community leaders have taken on, which has given the fuel. You know, we talk about outside-inside activism and work. The outside work on this, of those activists, those advocates, influenced the work on the inside of getting to the point where we could get bipartisan support for $15 billion in the bipartisan infrastructure law to address this issue, which is to replace lead pipes. City leaders. Well, again, you have the elected leaders here who have been national leaders on this issue, not only for Wisconsin, but for places around the country, communities around the country, who have been advocating for removal of lead pipes here. In Milwaukee, it is believed that I guess there have been over 4,000 lead pipes so far that have been removed because of the actions and the activism of the leaders here, and in particular, the leaders in our labor unions, the plumbers, pipe fitters, the two leaders, the men that we met earlier, who are doing the hard, the highly skilled work of removing lead pipes. So last month we released the Biden-Harris Lead Pipe and Paint Action Plan, and the goal is to remove and replace all lead pipes over the next 10 years. It will invest $15 billion nationally in this effort, and here in Wisconsin, as has been said, $48 million will be dedicated in the year 2022. These investments will create good union jobs. These investments will address the needs of our children. These investments will result in improved public health, the creation of more jobs, the infusion of support for important apprenticeship programs, and it is just simply the right thing to do. Long overdue, but the right thing to do. I said earlier, and I'll close with this, a day in the life of a child is a very long time. We are long overdue to get this done, and we will get this done, and generations of Americans will forever benefit because of the work that is happening right here in Milwaukee. Thank you all.